"You're not coming to the wedding," my mother texted. "No hello. No softening. Clara's family doesn't want you there." I stared at the screen longer than I should have, like maybe if I waited, the words would rearrange themselves into something kinder. They didn't. The gray chat bubble just sat there, flat and final, glowing against my palm. My laptop hummed on the kitchen table in front of me, still open to a budgeting spreadsheet I'd been updating for them less than an hour earlier. Rows of numbers. Color-coded cells. Deadlines neatly aligned. Proof that, right up until that moment, I was still useful. Before I go any further, pause for a second and tell me, where are you watching from? Because I want you to picture this exact moment with me. Early afternoon. Cold coffee going untouched. Sunlight hitting the wall but not warming anything. And one sentence quietly cutting me out of a life event I'd been helping build for months. I read the message again. Then once more. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what not to say. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to ask what I'd done wrong. I wasn't going to pretend this was a misunderstanding. This wasn't confusion. This was a decision. I typed back slowly. "So you chose appearances over blood." No emoji. No follow-up. I hit send and set my phone face down on the table like it might start vibrating if I kept looking at it. For a few seconds, I just sat there listening to the low mechanical whir of my laptop fan. That sound had been part of my life for years. Late nights. Early mornings. Fixing things before anyone noticed they were broken. And suddenly, something shifted. Not anger. Not sadness. Awareness. I'm 28 years old. I work as a digital operations consultant. Companies call me when their systems are tangled, bleeding money, or quietly collapsing behind polished presentations. I don't walk in and flip tables. I map dependencies. I find weak points. I rebuild foundations so everything else can stand without anyone knowing how close it came to falling apart. It pays well. It's invisible. And apparently, it prepared me perfectly for my role in my own family. Clara is my younger sister. Growing up, she was the center of everything. Louder. Brighter. Easier to love, according to everyone else. I was the reliable one. The calm one. The one who didn't cause problems. When she got engaged, chaos followed like it always does. Venues booked too late. Deposits miscalculated. Vendors talking past each other. My parents panicked. Clara cried. And without anyone officially asking, I stepped in. I built timelines. I tracked payments. I organized contacts. I fixed mistakes before they became disasters. When something went wrong, the call came to me. When something needed explaining, I handled it. "You're just better at this stuff," my mother said more than once, smiling like it was a compliment. I told myself it meant I mattered. I didn't realize it meant I was infrastructure. The wedding was 3 weeks away when that text arrived. 3 weeks. That number echoed in my head because anyone who's ever managed a large event knows what that means. That's the danger zone. The point where everything looks stable on the surface, but one missed approval can unravel months of planning. I could already see the pressure points. The dependencies stacked on top of each other. And that's when a thought slid into my mind so quietly it scared me. What would happen if I stopped? That night, after the apartment went quiet and the city outside my window settled into its usual hum, I opened my laptop again. Not because anyone had asked me to. Not because I felt guilty. But because there was one loose end I hadn't touched yet, and it had been sitting there in my mind ever since the text arrived. The venue. I logged into the booking portal using muscle memory. Same password I'd used dozens of times while coordinating timelines and walkthroughs. The dashboard loaded instantly. There it was. The reservation. Date locked. Location confirmed. My name listed as the primary account holder. I remembered the day we booked it. My mother's voice on the phone, tight with stress. "My card isn't going through," she'd said. "Can you just put it on yours for now? We'll sort it out later." I hadn't hesitated. I never did. I covered the deposit without a second thought and moved on to the next problem, assuming it would all balance out eventually. It hadn't. I scrolled slowly, reading details I'd ignored before. Payment method. Contract terms. Cancellation policy. And then I saw it, clear as day. Non-refundable deposit. No exceptions. No grace period. Once cancelled, the money was gone. My finger hovered over the trackpad. This wasn't symbolic. This wasn't silence. This was a concrete action with a permanent consequence. I could already imagine the morning after. Emails firing off automatically. Vendors asking questions. Panic rippling through plans that had been built on the assumption that I'd always be there to catch things before they fell. I took a breath. Then I clicked cancel. The screen refreshed. A confirmation box appeared immediately. Reservation cancelled. Deposit forfeited. That was it. No drama. No warning. Just a line of text quietly confirming that something they assumed was secure, wasn't anymore. I didn't feel anger surge through me. I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was something colder and steadier. Finality. The kind that doesn't need witnesses. I logged out, closed my laptop, and leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling as the weight of what I'd just done settled in. They didn't know yet. They would wake up to it. They would discover it in pieces. And by the time they understood what had happened, it would already be too late. If you've ever made a decision that couldn't be undone the moment you clicked confirm, comment below and tell me. Because that silence afterward? That's the sound of a line being crossed for good. The next morning, my inbox started filling before I even finished my coffee. The first email came from the venue itself. Polite. Professional. Informing me that the reservation had been cancelled and confirming the forfeiture of the deposit. 10 minutes later, another message arrived, this one copied to multiple vendors. Questions. Confusion. Requests for clarification. That was when the phone call started. My mother first. Her name lit up the screen, then disappeared when I didn't answer. A minute later, my father. Then Clara. Over and over. I watched the phone vibrate on the table, letting each call ring out. The rhythm was almost frantic now, like they were trying to stop something they could feel slipping away but couldn't see yet. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I opened my email and watched the systems respond exactly the way systems always do when a critical component is removed. Vendors began pausing work. Timelines flagged as unstable. Automated reminders escalated from friendly to concerned. The wedding, which had looked so solid from the outside, was suddenly full of question marks. By midday, one vendor emailed directly asking if there had been a change in authority. That question told me everything. They weren't just confused anymore. They were auditing the structure. And when professionals start checking structure, it means they've sensed a fault line. I opened my project dashboard, the same one I use with corporate clients, and pulled up the wedding files. Contracts. Payments. Dependencies. Everything mapped cleanly. Across the screen. It was all there. Undeniable. I hadn't built this system to protect myself. I'd built it because chaos makes me anxious. But now, it had become something else entirely. Leverage. I drafted one email. Just one. Calm. Neutral. The kind of message that sounds harmless until you understand what it triggers. I stated there was a conflict involving misrepresentation of authority and that all actions were suspended pending clarification. I copied every vendor involved and hit send. Then I closed my laptop and walked away. The fallout didn't arrive instantly. It never does. Panic takes time to travel through layers of denial. But by that evening, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls stacked up. Voicemails filled my inbox. The tone had shifted from confusion to urgency. That night, I slept deeply. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for the next problem to land in my lap. I wasn't bracing myself to fix something before it broke. I'd already removed the support beam. When I woke up, there was a single message waiting for me. Please call us. We need to talk. I stared at it for a long time, knowing this was the moment where I could still step back into the role they expected. The fixer. The mediator. The one who made everything okay again. Instead, I typed a single reply. I'll agree to one call. And as I set my phone down, I understood exactly what I was about to show them, even if they didn't yet. Because the venue was already gone. And now they were about to learn just how much else depended on me. I scheduled the call for the following afternoon. Not immediately. That part was intentional. Urgency makes people defensive. Waiting makes them unravel. I chose a time when I knew everyone would be available and uncomfortable. Then I went about my day like nothing was wrong, which turned out to be harder than I expected. The morning passed slowly. My phone stayed silent, but my inbox didn't. Vendors were now looping each other in, copying assistants, adding polite disclaimers. Words like pause, hold, and pending clarification started appearing more frequently. The system was reacting exactly the way it was designed to when something structural failed. I watched it happen without interfering, and with every hour that passed, the picture became clearer. They weren't confused. They were scared. Right before the call, my hands finally started to shake. Not because I doubted myself, but because I knew what I was about to take away from them wasn't just convenience. It was control. And people don't let go of control quietly. When the screen lit up, I saw all of them at once. My mother sitting stiffly at the dining table. My father leaning too close to the camera. Clara in the corner of the frame, arms crossed, jaw tight. No one smiled. No one made small talk. The tension was thick enough to taste, and I hadn't said a word yet. They started talking immediately. Overlapping voices. Questions that weren't really questions. Accusations disguised as concern. Why are vendors calling us? What did you tell them? Do you have any idea what this looks like? I waited. I always do. Letting people talk reveals more than interrupting ever could. When the noise finally died down, I shared my screen. The dashboard filled the call. Clean. Organized. Neutral. A map of timelines, approvals, payments, and dependencies that told a story no one wanted to hear. I didn't rush. I let the silence stretch while they processed what they were seeing. My mother's eyes darted across the screen. My father frowned, trying to understand. Clara's face went pale. Every system here, I said calmly, runs through me. No one responded right away. That pause mattered. Because in it, something fundamental shifted. They weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at the truth, laid out in a way that couldn't be argued with. I explained how professional workflows operate. How authority chains matter. How removing one node forces the entire structure to adjust. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I didn't raise my voice. I simply described reality. Clara finally spoke. Her voice cracked, sharp with panic. So what are you saying? That you're just done? I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized how unfamiliar she felt to me in that moment. I'm saying I stepped back, I replied. Everything else is just consequence. My father bristled. He leaned forward, anger flashing across his face. He started to say something about family. About loyalty. About how this wasn't how things were supposed to be handled. I stopped him gently, not with words, but by ending the screen share. The dashboard vanished. The silence returned. I didn't change anything, I said quietly. I stopped compensating. That was the moment Clara started crying. Real crying. Not the performative kind I'd seen during planning sessions. This was raw. Uncontrolled. My mother reached for her, murmuring something I couldn't hear. My father looked stunned, like the floor had shifted beneath him and he didn't know how to stand again. I ended the call. Not dramatically. Not angrily. I simply said, I'm done here, and clicked the button. The screen went dark, reflecting my own face back at me for a split second before disappearing entirely. My heart was racing now, loud enough that I could hear it in my ears. But underneath it, there was something else. Relief. Sharp. Immediate. Irreversible. The next few days unfolded without me. And that was the point. The wedding didn't collapse in flames. It didn't need to. It began to shrink. Quietly. Options narrowed. Backup plans disappeared. Premium services downgraded. Each adjustment small enough to justify on its own, but devastating when taken together. The illusion of control evaporated, and with it, the confidence they'd been riding on for months. I heard about it through distant channels. A cousin mentioning changes. An old friend hinting at stress. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. I was already somewhere else mentally, emotionally. I redirected my energy into my work. New contracts. New clients. New problems that paid me instead of draining me. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. Weeks passed. Long enough for the noise to fade. Long enough for the shock to settle into something heavier. Acceptance, maybe. Or resentment. I didn't know. I didn't care. And then, one evening, my phone lit up with a message I hadn't been expecting. We don't understand why you went so far. I read it once. Then again. The words felt small. Almost fragile. Like they were trying to rebuild the old dynamic with a single sentence. I didn't respond. Because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. They didn't want to understand. They wanted access. I set the phone down and went for a walk, letting the cool air hit my face, grounding me in the present. Streetlights flickered on one by one. Somewhere across the city, plans were still unraveling. Consequences still moving through systems I no longer belonged to. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Because one final consequence was already in motion, quiet, delayed, and completely out of my hands, and when it surfaced, it would answer every lingering question about whether walking away had been the right choice. The last consequence didn't arrive with a phone call or a message meant for me. It came sideways, the way truth often does when you stop intercepting it. I heard it from someone else's mouth, casually, without drama, like it was just another piece of local gossip that didn't deserve its own moment. I was standing in line at a coffee shop near my new place, half listening to the conversation behind me, when I heard Clara's name. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The voice kept going, unaware of who was standing 3 feet away. Something about delays. About contracts that fell apart. About a situation that got more complicated than anyone expected. No one said my name. That part mattered. Because it meant the narrative had already shifted. I wasn't the villain in their story anymore. I wasn't even a character. I was a missing variable they could no longer account for. I took my coffee and walked outside, letting the door close softly behind me. The air was cool, clean, unfamiliar. The kind of air that belongs to a place where no one knows your family history or expects you to fix their problems. I stood there for a moment longer than necessary, letting the weight of it settle. When you remove the person holding everything together, things don't collapse immediately. They strain. They wobble. They reveal exactly how fragile they always were. And that's what had finally happened. Not because I caused it, but because I wasn't there to prevent it anymore. That night, my phone buzzed again. A new message. Shorter this time. Less confident. Can we just talk? I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I'd stared at any message before. Not because I was tempted to reply, but because I wanted to understand what I was feeling. There was no anger. No satisfaction. No urge to explain myself one last time. What I felt instead was something quieter and far more final. Detachment. If you're listening right now and you've ever wondered whether walking away makes you cruel, I want you to really hear this part. Walking away doesn't erase your empathy. It just stops you from sacrificing yourself to prove it. I didn't reply. The days that followed were ordinary in the best possible way. Work emails about projects that mattered. Conversations that didn't revolve around crisis management. Evenings where my phone stayed silent because no one needed rescuing. I realized how much of my identity had been built around being indispensable. And how little space that left for me to exist as a person. Weeks later, another message came through. Longer. More emotional. Words about family. About mistakes. About how things got out of hand. I read it once. I didn't finish it. Because halfway through, I recognized the pattern. Not accountability. Reset. An attempt to slide back into a dynamic where I carried the load and they carried the comfort. I deleted it. That was the moment I knew I was done for real. Not because they'd failed me one last time, but because they no longer had the power to pull me back in. The system had adjusted. My absence had been absorbed. And I had built something new in the space they left behind. I changed routines. I changed priorities. I stopped explaining myself to people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I built a life that didn't require constant vigilance. A life where silence meant peace, not danger. One morning, while updating my emergency contact information for a new account, I paused. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For the first time, I didn't default to a family member. I chose myself. That small decision felt bigger than anything else I'd done that year. Because it meant I finally trusted my own judgment without needing approval. I thought back to that first text. The coldness of it. The way it landed without apology. At the time, it felt like rejection. Like erasure. But standing where I was now, I could see it clearly for what it really was. Permission. Permission to stop overfunctioning. Permission to step out of a role I never agreed to. Permission to let systems fail without me propping them up. I didn't ruin a wedding. I didn't betray my family. I didn't go too far. I simply stopped performing emotional labor for people who confused access with entitlement. And here's the truth they'll never say out loud. They didn't lose me when I stepped away. They lost control. I gained something far more valuable. Peace. If this story hit close to home, tap like so more people who need to hear it can find it. Subscribe if you want real stories about boundaries, power shifts, and walking away without guilt. And tell me in the comments. What would you have done in my place?